Nestled within the University of Colorado Boulder's campus, JILA, a joint institute between CU Boulder and the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, is a hub for some of the most groundbreaking research in physics today. To do this research, many JILA fellows and their teams use supercomputers and other computing machines to run simulations, do calculations, and more. JILA's computing shop, comprised of 6 members, helps facilitate all things computing at the institute, from onboarding new JILAns with their tech to ensuring JILA's older infrastructure can keep up with the ever-growing internet bandwidth demands. The computing shop includes Head of Computing Jim McCown, Eric Alvarado, Corey Kiesling, Dan Pachman, Michael Page, and J.R. Wraith. In this episode, we'll explore why computing isn't just a tool, but a pivotal force in physics research. From simulating complex quantum systems to analyzing vast arrays of astrophysical data, computing allows scientists to push the boundaries of what's possible and uncover the mysteries of the universe. To tell this story, you'll hear from 2 computing staff members, J.R. Wraith and Dan Pachman, who've both been at JILA for over a decade. You're listening to Humans of JILA, a JILA podcast focused on the human narrative of the institution's researchers. I'm your host and science communicator, Kenna Hughes Castleberry. Every month, I tell the story of a researcher or group within JILA, showcasing the human sides behind the science. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like it on our YouTube channel or follow us on Spotify, and be sure to share it with your friends and family. This episode features interviews with computing shop members J.R. Wraith and Dan Pachman. So whether you're a physics enthusiast, a computing guru, or just curious about where science is headed next, stay tuned as we dive into the intersection between computing and physics. Let's begin our story. It's best to start our story of computing with a bit of chronological history about the development of computers, which is where JILA computing staff member Dan Pachman's expertise lies.
So I'm Dan Pachman, been here about 10 years, nominally hired on because of my understanding of Unix and Mac OS, and I also have a background in data analysis, and so I've done a few jobs in that area as well. So I come here, this is my second job after graduating. My first job was 35 years at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, where I worked on a series of satellite projects, sometimes 3 at the same time, but pretty much successive launches, and then we would revisit the data again and again. Most recently here, in that context, I worked with Pete Bender, who just recently passed away. He had some satellite data, and it was very much like coming home to deal with that and some of the formatting that it was in. So that was interesting.
What kind of made you originally interested in computers and computing?
My first introduction to computers was in the 60s when I was in elementary school. And this was not something that many elementary schools did, but they had a series of pre-punched computer cards that they handed out, that they had available to us, and we could order them in a way to create a very simple early Fortran program. They would then send it off to the computer, which was some huge thing far, far away, and then they would bring back the printout, which in those days, of course, was the standard line printer stuff with the alternating colored bands on it. And I wrote a program that created a table of Fahrenheit and centigrade temperatures, and just in a little loop. And I got my printout, and it was just sort of magic that here I could tell a computer something to do, and it just did it. And so that was my first Fortran program in the 60s. Just amazing. The underlying hardware at the time, although I didn't see it physically, was discrete components, that is, transistors that are physically big enough that you see with the naked eye. They have like typically 3 wires coming out of them. You stick them on a board and you solder them in place. So I missed out. I'm a youngster, so I missed out on the period before that, which were tubes.
Right, vacuum tubes.
And the time before that, which was relays, and the time before that, which was gears. So I missed a few generations, but the typical CPU of the time and into the subsequent years was still discrete components and massively large boards that together would produce a single CPU.
Right.
And so after that, of course, we moved into the integrated circuits, and that's still pretty much where we are now. It's just that more and more gets put on a single chip. And it's interesting to see where things are going. I'm particularly amused by being here, where there are people in the QM group, quantum group, that I keep nagging to get me a quantum computer. I want it now, and I want 1,000,000 times at least, if not 1,000,000,000 times more compute power. So if any of those people are listening, I want it still, and please, now.
Yeah,
Okay?
Dan's on the waiting list, so
Right,
make it
right.
happen.
Yeah, make it happen. Right.
But you have a very interesting background, briefly from what I know, because you didn't originally start in computing, right?
Right. So I was always interested in computing, and then through high school, I did math and science and all that other stuff, but I was always interested in astronomy. And so in elementary school and then into junior high, I made my own telescope, got involved with a amateur group of variable star observers. We also made telescopes. We went up to Griffith Observatory in L.A. Every week to go into the basement and grind our mirrors and whatever, and we would sing songs and whatever while we were all in our group there, a social group. And then, so it was a social group to build the telescopes, and then a social group to use them. Our noble leader had an 18-inch, and then finally we all worked together to make a 22-inch reflector, which was really big.
And this was in middle school?
This was pretty much elementary through high school.
Okay.
And so one of the highlights of that was building my own reflector, an 8-inch, putting it in the backyard. And then, although this was LA, it was still dark enough that I could see planets. And so seeing a very clear view of Saturn with that was really quite breathtaking. Yeah. So pretty neat stuff. So, yeah, so I was sort of brought up in the astronomy area, and that was in astrophysics, and that's where I got my undergraduate and graduate degrees. But I always was sort of fascinated by or taken by, unbiddenly, by computers. So I, as a freshman in particular, I would spend lots and lots of time just playing with computers and programming and assembly and doing all these things. This was around 1970 was the beginning of the so-called information science as an area of pseudoscience, I guess it still is. The Knuth books were emerging and some of the fundamentals of algorithms then. So we tried a lot of that stuff out, bubble sorts and other things in our programming. So it was kind of fun then. So after these graduate degrees, though, I had to find a job, and the one that came up was this one at NCAR in a group that did the satellite stuff. And so I was involved in data analysis more than anything else. But as time went on and the groups got bigger and bigger, I got more and more involved in the computing associated with the administration of the group and user storage and all of that.
So I know, just off mic, you've mentioned that you went to Caltech during when Feynman and Dirac both came. This has nothing to do with computing, but I was hoping maybe you could share a little bit about
so
your experiences.
My real claim to fame, I suppose, is my uncle, Sam Weissman, who worked on the atomic bomb at Los Alamos, physical chemist, brilliant guy, and he worked with Feynman. Feynman was the odd youngster in the group, and seeing people like my uncle and seeing Feynman as well, I got an early view of just how excited and exciting people could be who were deeply involved in science. We, as a child, I remember visiting him in St. Louis and hearing stories that he would tell of the war years, and he knew Fermi and the greats of that period. It was just fascinating. And then here he was, ultimately in his 80s and beyond. He'd get a gleam in his eye and say, "Let me take you down to the lab and I'll show you my device," that kind of a thing. He just always was excited about that sort of a thing. And he described his attraction to his wife as that she had a luminous mind. They were just both eggheads, and it was marvelous to see that kind of a relationship. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. I bet. And then, of course, you kind of get that more when you ended up
right.
At
So
Caltech.
at Caltech, you're just surrounded by a bunch of people that can rub a few neurons together, and again, I mean, we all know now, particularly how complex Feynman was, shall we say, as a person. But his excitement about science was palpable, and he certainly got that across. He taught a class there called Physics X in my day, where we could go in and ask just about any question. And so typically it was just the couple of hundred people that fit in the lecture hall, and he would go off on a tangent about a particular subject and be absolutely fascinated by it. One of them in particular I remember was which way the water goes down the drain. Does it go differently in the northern and the southern hemisphere? And I think the answer is yes, but there are so many initial considerations of the motion of the water, it's very hard to start at a stable enough state to really determine what's going on. So there are a number of problems of that sort that just fascinated him. And we would have luminaries come. Amongst them was Dirac, who came and made I don't know what he said, and I think a lot of people didn't either. We asked Feynman afterwards, so what was that all about? And he had said, "I have absolutely no idea." People can be brilliant and obscure
Yes.
sometimes. So it was an exciting time. It also was the time of the Soviet Union and heightened tensions. And a contingent of Soviet scientists came to campus then, and it seemed like something out of a comic strip, because here they were, these stern people, and the even sterner, obvious KGB people that were marshaling them around and did not leave their side. And then here we were, crazy undergrads running around, inviting them to dinner and stuff like that, and it was a very strange time. If we wanted any advertising for our country, this was it. Yeah, we're in a better place.
Right.
So
we're happier.
we're happier there. Yeah.
Sure. So getting back to kind of more recently, your journey from NCAR to Gila, what happened there? How did you end up making the switch?
Right. So I worked for a guy named John Gilley for all those 35 years in his group. And he retired. That was the end of the satellites,
Sure.
and I needed to do something else. So it was sort of two different directions for me, it seemed. One was to try to stay within NCAR and maybe become a system administrator of one of the divisions there, but those things didn't come open all the time, and I had no guarantee of getting it. And then the other was, this position's open up here. Better take this, and I'll be able to do all kinds of fun stuff because it'll be campus. And it proved to be more than true in that regard. Just a great bunch of people, both within the group and within Gila, and I've explored the campus as well and taken classes, and I know a lot of people in the classics department now, and through my wife, who's a violinist, there are a lot of contacts in the music department, and there's just a lot going on this campus and a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm very happy to be here.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Since you've talked a little bit about the history of computers, perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about the history of computing here at Gilla and why computing is important for research.
Right. So other people are not newbies like me in the computing group here. I'm relatively new at about 10 years. But so like the X-Wing was already built when I got here.
Sure.
Although it wasn't when I was a student here 40 years ago.
Right.
And in fact, I did have an office in Gamow Tower then as a grad student. But so a lot of what goes on with computers is sort of two different directions in science. One is that you need to deal with your data, sometimes voluminous data, particularly if it comes from satellites and such, and sometimes even instruments. So you've got all this information. And if you look at history, you see experimentalists with experimental books, and they've taken down their notes, handwritten, and they deal with what seems to be an amazing amount of data for a human to deal with. One of the earliest astronomers, Tycho Brahe, was amazing in that he could see so well. His eyes were good. So his instrument was his eye, and his computing system was his hand. And there were only so many things that he could see and so much data that he could take. Now we have the ability to, without breathing hard, we can do things like not just take a least squares, but we can take an autocorrelation function. We can do a Fourier transform. We can do all sorts of things to the data so that what we want to actually measure comes out, even if our instrument is not as directly measuring what we want or is complicated by noise and other things that have to be corrected out. So there's that aspect of it where you're dealing with the data. There's another related area, though, with that, and that's the visualization of the data, something that I've only gotten to appreciate gradually as over the years, and that is that how do we even visualize it? And if we're talking about a simple line drawing, fine, but sometimes there's more data that's there, and we have to see where it is in multiple dimensions. And I think this is an area where the new computing directions that we see with virtual reality is going to have a fundamentally different effect on how we view data and how we can actually deal with it. So there's two things that are going to happen, I think, in that regard. One is that we're going to be able to put on helmets and walk through our data and look at it in that way. And then the other is that we'll be able to feed our data into post-processing systems that will use some kind of artificial intelligence, and we'll be able to boil things down to a system where we can see it. But that's just seems to be the direction that things are going. The whole other direction of computing, though, is, of course, the theory. And we have theories that tell us a lot about what is going on. And then we have competing, very subtle theories at the very foundations of physics that differ only in very small effects. And so we're constantly pushing the limits of what we can measure, but we're also constantly pushing the limits of what we can calculate. And so all of that comes together to really push the limits of the science. And we're pretty far from just pencil and paper these days. And it's kind of exciting. I remember back when I was just in grad school, but working on another satellite project before I actually got a regular job in a grad school, and it was I did this Fourier transform of a particular set of data, and the answer just popped out. In frequency space, it was like magic to see that stuff happen, and the magic that we see today is just leaps and bounds beyond that. It's just
right.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's incomprehensible almost.
There's an interesting, more general question from an emotional standpoint, and that is, in what way do you feel that you know something? Okay? if you feel good about it, but you can't do any problems in it, which is sort of like the classic Physics 101 at Caltech. You read the Feynman books, you feel really good about it, and then you can't do a damn problem. You can't figure out anything. And then you go to the workbook and you start the real study. So there's always the issue of knowing something and being able to calculate is sort of like part of the whole thing that works in tandem in science. In the case of the math, as the math gets more and more complicated, you get further and further away from just being able to point to your fingers and go, this is what it is. So if you've got a sine function, you know what it is, but you can't directly calculate it immediately in any shape, but you feel what it is, and you can see the shape of it in a graph and all that other stuff. And then you know that you can calculate it anytime you want, so you can put an equation together and you look at it and you feel like you know it. In the case of the computer, though, it makes it come alive in a way that otherwise would not, in that I remember the days of having a slide rule and you could do a whole bunch of stuff on it, but it wasn't quite the speed and the agility of the computer. And so whether it's something in closed form like a sine function or an elliptical function or whatever, or if it's something that isn't even in closed form but something that's defined iteratively, it's there for you. And so there's an emotional knowing that's involved in having the computers available to you, because you know that you can get the numbers anytime you want. It's a strange psychological thing, but computers make us feel like we know it.
Yeah.
But practically, it means that, yeah, we can calculate it. We can do the magic of, does this set of theory work with this particular data or not? And that's the big question always. And, so we get to do it more and more.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It is cool. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. What is something that you think someone should know when working with the computing shop, or before they even start with the computing shop? Whether it's like a piece of advice or just something in general where you're like, hey, I really wish people knew this.
Well, I don't, that's a thing that we have to always remind ourselves, and that is that there are a lot of people here who are really sharp when it comes to science. And there are people here that have a vast difference in their understanding of computers or their abilities with it. We have some groups and some fellows who know as much about computers, I think, as we do, and they build them themselves and they use them in all kinds of ways. We have many people in the shops, in the labs, that have their own computers, and they deal with the physical interface to their experiment in ways that far exceed our understanding. And yet, there are still some people that are very uncomfortable with computers and just have other skills. And so we try to be as helpful as we can with the entire set of people that we are come in contact with. And sometimes a person will become very familiar with a particular operating system, but just need somebody to help them with something else. Or they're familiar with one way of doing it, and we may have another way of doing it. So we are trying continuously to be helpful for people. And for some people, that means really getting out of the way. And for others, it means to try to just more directly help them. I think that our concern is that the campus wants to do things in a one-size-fits-all.
Sure.
And we're trying always to try to insulate people from that, both from the administrative overhead of dealing with licensing,
Right.
to installation, to all the other crap that just gets in the way, so that they can do the fun stuff, all the science. And we want to see that happening. It's what motivates us. It's fun. So come talk to us and tell us what you want to do, and maybe we'll have some better way of doing it or can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
completely agree with that. My last question for you, Dan, is just what is your favorite thing about Gilla? What do you enjoy the most about being here?
So one of the things that excited me a great deal about Caltech, I knew I always wanted to go there since I was in elementary school, just because, that was the place. It was nearby and it was cool. But when I got there, the thing that really amazed me was the way the people in the physics group interacted. Nobody had to look over their shoulder and worry about somebody stealing their ideas. They had plenty of ideas. They all did. And after leaving Caltech, I realized just how amazing that was. And coming here, I feel a lot of the same thing.
Similar community.
Yeah. No, the fellows don't need to worry about ideas. They've got ideas. They're masters in their fields. What they show is excitement for others and excitement for their own students in an egoless way, largely. And it's marvelous to see, It's like, here, let me help you with that idea, or, oh, that's great. It's like if we all are focusing on the excitement of the physics, then all the complications, all the ego, all of the other considerations just disappear. And we're just having fun. It's great.
To bring computing into a bit more of the modern era, we'll now hear from computing member J.R. Wraith.
I'm J.R. Wraith, and I've been in computing since late 2006. I handle kind of a little bit of everything. My primary responsibilities are like Windows machines as well as the network in the building. It's kind of interesting doing the network in the building because I believe we're the last building on campus that does our own network. And we've occasionally talked with OIT about them taking it over, and I'm opposed to that because I really enjoy doing it. It's kind of fun to get up in the ceilings and pull cable or even deploy Wi-Fi in the building. There was very little when I started. And then everybody's device suddenly needed Wi-Fi, and then everybody had 3 devices that suddenly needed Wi-Fi. And so it became a very big task very quickly. Yeah. But now it's actually not so bad.
Okay.
It's just kind of trying to cover dead spots.
I was just going to say, so how many different, and I'm not a tech person, but how many different Wi-Fi?
So most people would say like a router, but the right term is an access point. The ones that we use are fairly low cost. It's a company called Ubiquiti. And we have around 80 of them throughout Gilla. There's 2 per floor in the tower. And I think that's actually going to have to go up.
Oh, wow.
Just because the tower is a challenge of its own.
Fair.
The Wi-Fi doesn't propagate well through concrete or metal, and the tower is basically a concrete shell with an internal concrete shell with a metal shaft running up and down through it. So
perfect.
Lots of access points. But the ones we buy, they're low cost. They're about $100. It's no big deal. So
Great. Well, what made you originally interested in computers and computing?
Basically, video games is the answer. I wanted a computer from a pretty young age because I had a Nintendo growing up, an original NES, and I would see magazines that would have different games that I didn't know how to get or play, and then I eventually learned they're on these things called computers, and then I think a lot of people my age, the trick with your parents was, well, I'm going to use it for school.
Right. Smart.
And so my dad eventually bought a used old computer, an old IBM from a coworker, and I very quickly started taking it apart and learning a lot of just how to use it, which led into a few more computers growing up. And I've always been somebody to tinker around with a computer. Just like what else can I make this thing do? What don't I know about this? What's this weird option that's 6 levels deep that I need to learn about? And a lot of that for me was learning by doing. Like I read a book about this stuff. Who does that? I'm just gonna tinker and see what works. Eventually, that led to me coming here to the University of Colorado, Boulder, in the year 2000 for college. And I didn't know how to figure out how to learn more about computers and get a degree for it.
Okay.
So over 4 years, I meandered. I was open option for a long time. I eventually settled on I had to pick something. And I was like, maybe I'll do economics. I had a good economics class in high school. That didn't go well. I had taken some computer science courses, but they didn't go well. I'm not a very strong math person.
Right.
And after economics, I tried journalism. I thought, I'm going to go write for a video game magazine. So if I did that now, I'd be out of a job. I hate to say it. There's not a lot of video game magazines.
That's so fair.
Yeah. But then I found my way into geography. And I actually do have a degree in geography, which I got in 2004. The first class was remote sensing of the environment. It was an upper division geography class with no prerequisites. And it was all about analyzing satellite data on computers and making maps. So all of that time, while I was trying to figure out what degree I would have, I would go back to my dorm room and play computer games and set up computers and make them a network. And I had a job working for OIT on campus. Back then it was ITS.
Sure.
And I was a student who had an office in the engineering building with a couple other students. And our job was to deliver paper and toner around campus. But we had our own office with no windows and a locked door. And our boss was in the stadium. And she did not keep a very close eye on us as long as we kept the rooms stocked. So we basically hung out in that room and played a lot of computer games.
Love it.
Eventually engineering wanted that office back, I think. And so we moved into the stadium, and the stadium used to have a public computer repair shop called PC Maintenance. We would get people coming in from all over Boulder with, their home computers, and then we could charge them and bill them, but we were also servicing campus at the time. Although I was a student worker delivering paper and toner, the boss of PC Maintenance at the time said, hey, my wife's about to have a kid. You know about computers, right? Can you cover for me for a few weeks? I went, yeah, sure. So with just a little bit of training, they started letting me handle customer computers. And that went well. So I was doing that as a job from 2002 to 2004, thereabouts. And as I was earning my degree in geography, I basically had the option of I could have stayed and worked with them. Like, they kind of wanted to hire me on full time. That's my understanding. But I think that's what happened. And I said, thank you. That's a great idea. But instead, I'm going to move to Australia for a girl. And we're still friends. But after 2 years, my visa ran out, and it was time to come back to Colorado. So, and I didn't know actually where I wanted to go after that. I had options. I have a lot of family in Ohio. I have a very good friend in Michigan. And I was kind of thinking about those, but I said, I miss my college friends in Colorado. I want to go spend time with them. So I came back here, and I applied back at PC Maintenance in the stadium. I said, I would love to come back if you guys will have me. And I'm not sure they put in a lot of effort in trying to get me back, but I at least went through an application process. But that didn't pan out. I had a temporary job offer from parking management here on campus. But I was hoping for something more permanent that would have just been like a bridge to the PC maintenance job if that had worked out. But instead, I was looking for jobs, and I found on Craigslist there was a posting for somebody to support scientists. And I very clearly remember the words that you must not be afraid of lasers or dark rooms.
Oh my gosh. This was on Craigslist?
This was on Craigslist. And so I applied for that. And I think I actually applied twice, is my recollection. Because I think I saw the job posting like within a couple weeks, like twice in a couple weeks. And the second time I got a call from, at the time, the boss of the Combined Computing and Electronics Shop was Joel Fromm. And we met and had coffee on the Hill. And then I came back. He said, I think, you should meet the rest of the guys in the group. So let's set up a time to meet up. And I said, okay, now which building is it? And he said, it's the Gilla building. I said, okay, but which building is it? I'm familiar with campus. I have no idea where this building is.
Right, I've never heard of it. Yeah.
And I have walked by this building 100 times. There didn't used to be any sort of external labeling on the building.
Of course.
So I finally figured out where it was. I went, oh, it's not just more Dwayne physics, which is what I thought as a student. I mean, there was just labs in here. I'd walked through it once or twice. I'm pretty sure we picked up a printer for PC maintenance and repaired it once or twice. Um, but I came in, I met the other guys in the group and just kind of had an informal, chit chat in the hallway with each of them. And then I was offered the job. So kind of mid-November 2006, I started here.
So when you applied for the job, what did you think you were going to be doing if you're not afraid of lasers in dark room?
Well, I basically, and it was clear from the job description that I would be supporting computers. I'd be doing Windows type support and potentially building machines. I just assumed I'd be doing that in dark rooms filled with lasers, and at times it's not wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're doing that a lot more
Yeah.
than you probably thought.
Yeah, but it's been a really great fit. Like I really enjoy my time here. There's a lot of freedom and flexibility, and we're all generally trusted to kind of get our work done and to help direct where we think computing should go, with input from our supervisors and stuff. But a lot of the ideas in the group, I think, come from the group. So
Right.
it's just been a very relaxed place to work, and I love it.
Nice. Oh, well, thank you for sharing your story.
Of course.
What sort of history does computing have at Gilla from just your time here? And
Sure.
why is it important for research?
So, before my time here, just one minor historical note is that there used to be the electronics shop before there were really computers. There was the Gilla analog electronics shop, and then they spun up the Gilla digital electronics shop.
Right.
And over time, the digital electronics shop became Gilla Computing.
Right.
So like I said, I got here in 2006, and Joel was the boss, and he was the boss of both groups at the time. And around the time that Beth came in, Joel took a position over in research computing, and they split the groups into two, so elect became separate from computing again. And since then, we've gone through a lot of migrations of software, of hardware. I think of a lot of moments of when was there a lot of friction. Asking people to stop using Windows XP, that was a lot of friction.
Oh.
Windows 7 was a lot of friction, and next year we're going to have a lot of friction with having to turn off Windows 10 for people.
That's right.
Yeah. There's been the evolution in the networking, like I said earlier. My favorite story from that is the Gilla Auditorium used to have one of a very few number of access points around Gilla. And it had an uplink. The cable that fed that was an old style network. So instead of like your normal network cable that looks like a really wide phone jack, people would use coax cable. It actually looks exactly like the stuff you see in labs, where it's got a BNC connector on the end, and then it's just a black cable. But this coax cable, it started in the S-wing on the second floor near my office. It ran all the way down the length of the S-wing. It dropped down, and then all the length of the B-wing. Dropped down 2 floors, followed the stairwell down under the auditorium, went up a ventilation shaft where it came out of a register that's above the doors in the auditorium, wrapped around the quarter of the room to the right to go into the auditorium booth to serve this one access point.
Oh my gosh.
So it was this really long cable that had a really slow speed because it was really old. And there wasn't quite enough Wi-Fi. We would get the occasional complaint about it. We'd kind of just go reboot the thing. But then it was some big meeting. I feel like it had people from from titles like Department of so-and-so meeting.
Sure, sure.
So we started hearing complaints that all of these people couldn't connect to their Outlook and do their email. And Jim McCown and I, that day, like during their meeting, we went and pulled fresh cable, the newer Cat5 cable, and that connects from B131, which is the across from the instrument shop guys, like all their the bigger room where their tools are. The cable starts in there, and then it actually follows a lot of that same path to get to the auditorium.
Wow.
But once we put a new device on the faster cable, all those problems cleared right up. So
Wow.
it was a very big day for Jim and I, but it should have already happened at that point. But when we got it done, we were really happy with how it worked.
Yeah. And I do feel like that kind of goes to that bigger point of you've probably seen a lot more of like the hidden or offshoot places in Gilla just because of how you move all cables and whatnot.
I love to take people down to the sub basement. And I think a lot of people know about it nowadays, but it's just got these giant, 8-inch thick doors with a big lever that you have to throw to open it. And we used to have a lot of computers down there that we had to inventory or at least be vaguely aware of. Tom Perkins' AFM experiment from many years ago was down there for a long time. But it's just a fun, big, quiet place that's really out of the way and it feels really hidden. And then you kind of open this big door and it's just this huge room. Down there's also a mechanical section behind a locked door, and we have some network equipment in there, some fiber really that connects various parts of Gilla to other parts of Gilla. But I've always loved getting into the places that not everybody gets to see in a building. And so being actually literally handed the keys to go do that on purpose is great.
On purpose. As opposed to by accident.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, I meant to ask you this earlier. So you mentioned that you play video games, you have lots of computers. Have you ever built your own gaming system? Or system?
Several times. So in college, I had a computer that was an off-the-shelf thing when I started college, and a couple years in, I said, "This is not good enough for my games." So I had previously built a computer when I was young, but I did some research at the time and built a very top-of-the-line machine. It was a Pentium 4, and it's just old. It's old at this point. It would be positively ancient. But I've built many computers for myself. A lot of Gilla is built with sort of a similar thought process of how can I make this like a good machine but cost effective for researchers, because I'm always thinking if this were my money, and obviously it's not, but if it were my money, what would I buy? What would I make the best value? So I'm always enjoying building a new computer. I just don't always have the money to.
Yeah, it probably gets very expensive.
It can. Quickly. Oh yeah. You can spend as much money as you want on computers. Especially with video cards in the last few years, they got very out of hand price wise.
I bet.
So
yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And so what sort of computing is used for research that you've seen?
So around Gilla you kind of have three types of computers, I would say. You have the computer that controls the experiment. You have the computer that people sit at and do office work or analyze the data at. And then you'll have more of a theory supercomputer type situation. We have a server room up on the 4th floor of the S Wing that has all of our cluster nodes. And if it's ever a really hot summer day and you need to cool off, I can give anybody a tour of that as well. It's very loud, but it's cool.
Right.
And people will submit jobs to the cluster, for instance, that will just doing math run for tens to, I think I heard recently somebody had a job for 180 days.
Oh my goodness.
And that whole time we're all going, man, I hope there's not a power outage, or if there is, I hope our batteries last. And I don't want to interrupt that. Right. But you have a similar story when it gets to an experiment control computer, where you'll have a camera that needs to be cryogenic, for instance. So I remember some years ago in KM Lab, there was a camera that I think took about 30 minutes from being cool to warming up, and it was computer controlled. So it was if I ever had to ask them to reboot to work on that machine for some reason, we kind of had to plan a little bit in advance.
Sure.
Because the thing that I never, ever, ever want to do is interrupt an experiment or harm a data run.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And as far as I know, that's only happened once.
Oh, no. Hopefully just the one time.
Just the one time. I was in, it was a Steve Cundiff lab, which now Adam Kaufman is in those labs. But I was in there looking at something I don't even remember anymore, but as I was walking back towards the door in the lab, I bumped a table. And suddenly a bunch of students and people working that were staring at monitors, they all kind of went, "Hey, what was that?" And they're all like looking and pointing out, like, "Guys, I bumped a table a little bit. I'm so sorry." And I feel like there was this like sigh of resignation of like, "Oh, okay, don't worry about it."
Right,
They're all
right.
clicking things to shut the experiment down and start over. And I mean, as far as I know, there were no hard feelings. And,
Sure.
hey, everybody makes mistakes, but
Yeah, it's all very sensitive.
yeah. And I always try to not do that sort of thing. So
Yeah. Sometimes it's tricky, though. Those labs are very tight.
they can be, that's for sure. Especially if you're like up on a ladder over a laser table and trying to, pull a cable somewhere. It can get a little narrow.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. Well, what is one thing that people should know about when they're coming to computing? Like, what is one thing you would give people either advice for or be like, hey, keep this in mind? Or
Yeah. One of the things that I like to tell people the most is if a problem takes you more than 5 minutes, come find one of us if it's a computer problem. Because we can probably help you out real quick and get you back to doing what you're doing. But we're really here to help. We can do many things that I don't want to say everything, but like anything you can do with a computer, we're here for. Like we can help you purchase a machine or spec something out, or if an old serial port's causing you trouble, we have replacement cables. We really are here in kind of a customer support facility to help. A lot of people have a lot of frustration with computers, so we're here to help ease that as much as we can.
Yeah. You certainly don't want somebody just rage quitting their computer and being like, oh, too late, it's done.
And I think most people have seen the movie Office Space, and there's a great scene where they take a printer and introduce it to a baseball bat.
Yep.
And it's very cathartic to watch this, and I know that there's a lot of that feeling that can happen in the lab, either from lab equipment or the computers. But come to us first before the baseball bat, I guess I would say.
Right. That's just generally good advice. Well, great. My last question for you, JR, is just what is your favorite thing about being at Jillo? What do you enjoy the most about it?
It's such a friendly, cooperative atmosphere. Everybody is so smart, and they're always willing to take a moment to talk to you if they're not busy, staring at a very long-running data screen before I interrupt it. It's just a really wonderful place where I kind of feel like I fit in, and I haven't always felt that way in life, so it's kind of really special to me.
Thank you for listening to Humans of Jilla, a Jilla podcast. Be sure to subscribe to Jilla's YouTube channel for more information and to keep listening to these episodes. This episode featured interviews with Computing Shop members J.R. Wraith and Dan Packman. Production design, sound design, and research by Kenna Hughes Castleberry, with assistance from Jilla's Science Communication Office and the Computing Shop. Sound and music by Pixabay and Kevin MacLeod. Jilla is a joint institute between NIST and the University of Colorado Boulder. Jilla hosts this podcast. Any use of this podcast without Jilla's permission or credit is prohibited.